Hello and welcome to Get Informed, America, the show that breaks through the mainstream media box to bring you real smart news. Hi, I'm Dave Oakenquist, and joining me is the editor of Informed America and a special contributor to WallStreetWireNews.com, Mr. Rodney Johnson. Rodney, good morning.
Morning, Dave.
Also joining us is a special guest, the editor of the Sizemore Income Letter, Mr. Charles Sizemore. Charles, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I do want to mention, I typically intro Rodney as the smartest man I know, but I didn't know if that would maybe start things off a little rough for you as being a couple of notches below that. Are you okay?
I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to turn off my camera and leave.
Okay. Well, as we know, Rodney is the smartest man I know, and a man that always gives great opinions. But Charles, you also have great thoughts and opinions on the world of politics and finance, and that's what we do here. If you're first,
I get a participation trophy.
There you go.
We'll be sure to get one for you. I don't know what color ribbon they give you. Maybe just yellow or something. I don't know, not blue ribbon. So anyways, guys, let's get into the topics today. And the biggest story of the week, all the craziness, the Des Moines Fish and Wildlife Department issued new fishing guidelines. No, that's not at all what we're talking about. Of course, we're talking about the chaos, the absolute chaos that happened in the Capitol earlier this week. This was one for the history books, guys, wasn't it? Who wants to start here? Rodney, take it away.
I think it was. I mean, the question is, what were they trying to accomplish? I mean, I understand you get people riled up and they say, march to the Capitol and fight, but then do what? Because once you get there and you get inside, what exactly are you going to change? Because, of course, Congress does not control the votes in the states. And so all they're doing is counting the electoral ballots, which they were going to count either that afternoon, later that night, the next morning, or 5 days later. It doesn't matter. You're not going to change the electoral votes by anything happening at the Capitol itself. But I was struck, I'll tell you, by one of the people involved in law enforcement, because, of course, they're getting a lot of flack right now because they were so undermanned. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that went into that, like the mayor of D.C. demanding that the National Guard show up without weapons because they didn't want anything to happen. But this gentleman said, look, he said, we were not there to protect a building. We were there to protect life. And we did that. I mean, our first and highest goal was, of course, to get the lawmakers out, to make sure everybody was secure. And then it was a question of, was there a confrontation that was going to, reach a high level? And he said there wasn't. I mean, clearly the one woman killed, Ashley Babbitt, is a tragedy. But it's amazing with so many people on premises with weapons and with weapons drawn, not more people were shot. And this guy said, I'm very happy today that one person was shot, which is a tragedy, instead of 40. And so the fact that they wander through the building and then wander out, you know what, without a loss of life, that's okay. And I thought that was the most reasonable thing I heard to come out of this.
Yeah, and of course, we don't want to see the Capitol building get stormed by protesters.
No, of course not. Of course not.
That goes without saying. But yeah, to your point, Rodney, and I think the intention of the protesters, I mean, I saw these guys as basically live action role playing as revolutionaries. And what really was their intent? I'm sure you guys saw a Buffalo guy, right? He looked like the Grand Poobah.
My comment was, isn't that like the fraternal order that Fred Flintstone was in?
Yeah. With the big horns, the Brontosaurus or whatever it was. Yeah.
Where does one buy that?
I don't know.
I'm asking for a friend.
Okay, well,
anger I get anger all day long. I recognize 40 million Americans believe that the election was fraudulent to the point of being able to sway it one way or another. Storming Capitol, I don't get. And, it moves to lawlessness, which is exactly what conservatives say they are against. Yeah. And so if you want to attack this, go through the channels. The channels are there. People are going through the courts. The courts time and again said, look, this isn't the way it is. And at some point you say, hey, I'm abiding by the law as written, and I want everybody else to do the same.
Something that really surprised me, there was a YouGov poll that came out shortly afterwards. I got a couple of stats here. 45% of Republicans supported the storming of the U.S. Capitol building, including 21% of independents. There's a lot of anger out there, to put that mildly. That really surprised me. What do you guys make of that poll?
I mean, to them, this is a storming of the Bastille moment. But you look at it and I honestly don't understand the anger. I mean, it's not like I'm a warm and cuddly, happy person normally. I mean, I'm sort of a curmudgeon, but I don't really, I don't see what there is to be that angry about. Honestly, I honestly don't get it. But I think the takeaway from this is, this isn't really over. all of this anger doesn't just get put back into a box. It's there. Like it's not. It doesn't just go away. It took years to rile this up. It's going to take years to sort of calm it back down again. So this problem is not going to go away tomorrow.
I tend to agree. And also within that poll, Rodney, I think you have something here, but within that poll, it said 56% among these voters who believe that enough, the thing we can't talk about here on YouTube, took place at the presidential election enough to change the outcome. 56% of all voters. So let me pose this. Could this anger maybe have been ameliorated if they had potentially done a more thorough audit of the ballots in some of these contentious states? Maybe to just say, look, we did it. We looked at all the signatures. We matched everything. We looked for dead people. We looked for whatever, people out of state, and we did it again, and it came out the same. Would that have maybe helped the situation a bit?
No. And the reason I say that so quickly is because in Georgia, a Republican Secretary of State and his lawyer did exactly that. And they looked for dead people voting, and they found 2. They looked for people who had moved out of state and received ballots, and they found many, because those people had not only moved out of Georgia, they had subsequently moved back into Georgia and were voting quite legally. And so they did find some irregularities. I believe it was Fulton County, Georgia, although I'm not sure. They found a number of ballots that had not previously been counted when they went through, and they applied them. But it was like 1,600 ballots. And so the normal irregularities did happen. The normal weirdness that happens with votes did happen. And there's a greater chance for it with so many more ballots being handled through the mail and all that other stuff with signatures required and witnesses and things. But nothing rose to the level of fraud, and certainly nothing rose to the level of a number of ballots that would change the election. And this is in a Republican-controlled state that was specifically looking for it. And still people weren't happy. And so if that's the case in Georgia, I can't imagine any information would sway many people's opinions in states like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Ohio.
Well, I would say that that answer is actually a worse answer, because then this is just irrational, and then if there's no swaying, then that's actually worse, I think.
Well, no, but that's just it. This has become a banner for just malcontents, and if you're just upset about your standard of living not improving over the last 30 years, or you're upset about, I don't know, perceived grievances, this is what you've latched onto, and it's not rational, but it's not rational at all. And you go through it, and okay, the Supreme Court threw it out. So 60 other judges threw it out. The actual Attorney General, who was one of Donald Trump's most loyal lieutenants, threw it out. Nobody really, there's no case here. It is what it is, but you still have this many people believing that there is one. I don't know what you do with that. I don't know what you do with people that believe the earth is flat. I met a guy a year ago who literally believes the earth is flat. And buddy, have you never been on an airplane? I don't know. I don't know what you do with these people, but
I'm not sure it's in the same category with flat earthers. My issue is that I see it as a social media issue, because you can find a kernel of information for most of these things. Like I said, there were a couple of ballots cast in the names of dead people. There were some ballots cast from people who moved out of state. There were these things in a kernel, and you can rely on people to amplify them and make it into this big conspiracy. And social media gives those people a voice they wouldn't otherwise have. And so it's the same thing we've talked about for a long time, and the drama documentary, right, Social Dilemma, brings up, which is this becomes an echo chamber where you can always find people willing to amp up the volume and the conspiracy into something on any side. And that to me is the real frustration here. And it makes it to the point where, as Dave, you alluded to, and Charles, you said, that no amount of findings by a court or some other body that's supposed to be impartial changes opinions. And that's a really, really sad day for us.
I found something interesting. We hear the term unprecedented being thrown around a lot, but there was a piece from PJ Media that came out here 6 other times. I'm going to run through these just very quickly. 6 other times people broke into the U.S. Capitol building. Of course, the most famous one is the War of 1812, where the Capitol was burned to the ground. But 1915, there was a German professor exploded a bomb in the reception room of the U.S. Senate, protesting going into World War I. In 1954, 4 Puerto Rican nationalists shot 30 rounds from semi-automatic pistols from the Ladies Gallery, a balcony for visitors of the House of Representatives. They wanted Puerto Rican independence from the U.S. 1971, Weather Underground exploded a bomb on the ground floor of the U.S. Capitol. 1983, a terror group Armed Resistance Unit took responsibility for detonating a bomb outside the lobby of Senate Minority Leader Robert Byrd's office. Then in 1998, Eugene Weston burst into the Capitol and opened fire, killing 2 Capitol police officers and just firing rounds all over the place. So it was not unprecedented what we saw necessarily, at least at the attacks on the Capitol. Could we be seeing more of this? And also a follow up. What is maybe China, Russia, Iran thinking about what they saw unfold earlier this week? Whoever wants to take it first.
They're laughing their butts off, right? Which I think a lot of people are. But you mentioned each of those times that the Capitol was breached. It was breached by an individual or just a very small group intent on causing harm or death. This was weird. This was many, many thousands of people who marched. I want to say many hundreds inside the Capitol itself. Yeah. It wasn't thousands. This was by and large mostly peaceful, to use a term that we heard a lot last year, because it was a very small group that actually went into the Capitol itself. But then went in to do what, right? You just look at it and it still just boggles the mind. They were not trying to kill the heads of, the Senate and the House. They weren't, there wasn't that thing going on. Their anger was so misplaced. It was very frustrating.
Sorry, what if they came in there with guns? I mean, this literally could have happened, and thankfully they did not. But
there were some guns, and there were some Molotov cocktails.
Saying, look, we can just take 100 men and basically take over the government here.
But that's just it. You don't take over the government. By taking the building, you've done nothing. You're in a building.
You could execute the House and the Senate or something like that. I mean, I'm not trying to give anybody ideas, but I mean, someone must be looking at this and saying that, no?
What did the French revolutionaries who stormed the Bastille actually accomplish? They've released the Marquis de Sade. Like that's what they did. That was history's biggest pervert. Like that guy, that's what the revolutionaries who stormed the Bastille, that's who they let out of jail. So if that's the precedent here, what really were they trying to accomplish? I don't know.
Are any perverts being held in the Capitol building that we know of?
No, don't go there. You're gonna get all into the QAnon thing. Don't go there.
Oh, geez, yeah, I wasn't even wanting to go there.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Let's just call it a complete disarray. I think with spur of the moment, I don't think anybody intended to march to the Capitol and do that. I think it just became one of those things that built on itself.
Yeah.
And it dissipated slower than it should have. It should have been handled quickly and dissipated. The president should have come on very quickly and said, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. Don't do this. He came on later, no doubt. But it should have been very early to say, hey, you need to leave. This is not what we want to have happen. And he didn't. And so that's unfortunate.
He waited till half his cabinet resigned, and then he started to apologize for it.
So, but I don't think this is good precedence. I don't think you're going to see this type of thing happen again and again and again.
Okay, well, hopefully.
Well, no. After this, do you think Capitol security is ever going to be the same? I mean, they're going to have the Marines guarding it from now until the end of time. After this,
it'll be decades. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolute craziness. All right, let's move on. We had an election Tuesday, the Georgia Senate runoffs. Both Democrat candidates whom I predicted to win, both of them won, Ossoff and Warnock. And this really changes the landscape in the Senate now at a 50-50 split, with Vice President Harris being able to cast a deciding tie-breaking vote. What did you guys make of this election? Charles, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, so I wasn't too surprised. It looked like both of those candidates had a lot of momentum, and the two Republican candidates had been sort of losing momentum for a while. What this really means is that you're not going to have gridlock, or at least not the kind of gridlock we've had in recent years, for the next 2 years at least. That means you will have a more active government. Now, you could argue that's bad, of course, but that seems to be what the market is reacting to. The market wants fiscal stimulus right now, and this means it's a lot more likely to get that. Now, it's funny, market rallies on a blue wave. Well, 4 years ago, the market rallied on a red wave. So, I mean, it's kind of, the market just does what it's going to do. But right now, the narrative what the market seems to be responding to is fiscal stimulus. Like, this is a fiscal stimulus based rally.
And I think also the market shrugged off the storming of the Capitol building as well. So it's just really nothing there. Rodney, what do you make of the implications of these two?
The market investors knew that storming the Capitol wasn't going to change anything. And to Charles's point, one of the things that Biden has said he wants to do is up the stimulus checks that went out from $600 to $2,000. And now everybody looks at it and goes, wow, that's going to happen in really short order. Interestingly, it doesn't change as much as we might think, because being evenly split, it means anybody on the fence can sway the outcome, particularly in the Senate, obviously, because it is 50-50, but more so, the president of the Senate, being Kamala Harris after, the transition, she does not vote unless there's a tie. That means that every senator who's on the fence about something can make it to where she doesn't exist in terms of what's going on there. And so this brings, Manchin from West Virginia as a moderate Democrat, and of course, Collins from Maine and Murkowski from Alaska, being certainly very centrist Republicans, and Mitt Romney for whatever that's worth. It brings them all into play because they can move that one vote, and all of a sudden, Harris just doesn't matter. Now, they do, of course, matter because they control the committees, and that's right. Where things happen, right? We talk about the votes on the Senate floor. The meat is in the committee before it ever shows up on the floor. And since those will be run by Democrats, that does change what's going to come for a vote. But it'll be interesting to see if we get what people think of as these really big changes, like packing the court, deader than a doornail. Manchin said he's not for it, right? And so there's a lot of things that people think of as very far to the left that might occur, and I don't think any of that's on the table now. But to the point of stimulus driving the markets, the Fed is printing $120 billion a month. That has not changed. And so investors are looking at it and going, wow, these people are kind of angry at the Capitol. Oh, yeah, the Fed is printing $120 billion a month. And so, yeah, the markets are going on.
Well, and in addition to the billions already being printed, we're also now likely going to get major infrastructure spending, all that kind of stuff. So it's not really hard to see what the market's seeing here.
Yeah. Money printer, go Burr. And by the way, for everyone watching here, I gave my thoughts on the Georgia election runoff. I also did a video as the storming of the Capitol building was unfolding. So if you want to look at some video content and all that, you can check back just a little bit lower on the channel. So we'll leave that aside for now. Go check that out. Let's move on, guys. Let's move on to Bitcoin, soaring now past 40,000. And Rodney, you wrote an article on Informed American from JP Morgan saying we could be looking at $146,000 for price per Bitcoin. Are we going to see that tomorrow, Rodney? This thing is just flying to the moon.
Bitcoin, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Bitcoin, I own some. I bought some later last year. I was looking at it, and I've written elsewhere about it. Bitcoin is a scarcity demand story. There are only so many that are going to be created. We're at 18.5 million plus a little bit. Only 21 million are going to be created, and more people can touch it now. They can buy it through PayPal, buy it through Square. They can buy it on the stock exchange where they're investing in a trust that buys it for them. And so you no longer have to do all that idiot digital wallet craziness to touch this thing. And because you have greater access by everyday people and you have a limited supply, it clearly shows you're going to have pressure on the price to move higher. And this isn't an American thing. We think about things as American centric. This is a global thing. So it's, as I've written, sort of a global Ponzi scheme. But as I've said, it's more of a global greater fool theory. Where it ends, I have no idea. Nobody else has any idea. JP Morgan was saying, well, let's look at how much gold is held in gold bars for investment. And if we look at that total amount and then divide it by the number of Bitcoin, it comes out to 146,000. Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at all gold held, including coins and other things, it puts Bitcoin at 350,000. I don't know. Round numbers. People think in round numbers. I think you're going to see a hard stop around 50 grand and then some sort of pullback. And then you're going to push through, and at 100 grand, you're going to have another pullback. But where it goes eventually, that's up to the greatest fool, whoever that is. And I hope it's not me. I hope I'm long gone before then.
Charles, your thoughts?
Well, it looks like what's driving it now is at least the rumor that institutional money is starting to get in. And the idea is, look, I mean, Bitcoin's not that big. I mean, as Rodney says, it's scarce. So if you have larger institutional money, pension plans, the big banks, whoever, if you have these big money players allocating even 0.5% of their portfolio to Bitcoin, that's enormous buying pressure, right? Now, I mean, you can get into this, arguments. Why Bitcoin? Why not one of the others? I mean, the arguments for Bitcoin are very similar to gold in that it's scarce. It's a scarcity play. Okay, great, but gold doesn't have a lot of industrial uses, right? And Bitcoin has 0 industrial uses. It's just it's just a blip on a computer screen, right? I mean, it doesn't actually do anything. So, could this all just be a shell game? I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But for right now, people really seem to believe in it, and institutional money is giving it credibility. So I don't really see an upward lid on it anytime soon. I think it probably just drifts higher. I mean, that's the direction it's going right now.
What about don't forget
here? Go ahead, Rodney.
That's all right. Don't forget JP Morgan talking their own book, right? Which is a term from Wall Street where you buy something and then you tell everybody else how good it is to try and entice them to buy it behind you and push up the price. And so JP Morgan got involved in a big way in Bitcoin last year, as did Goldman Sachs. And you saw, as Charles mentioned, some large players on the institutional side, like Mass Mutual, put some money toward Bitcoin, as did some other people publicly. And so if we know of these people doing it publicly, who did it privately, right? And then you have all the private wealth funds, and then you have the family offices of very rich people who say, look, think of it as, digital gold, and maybe you put 2% in it. Well, guess what? If you're running $1 billion, that's $20 million. And to Charles's point, Bitcoin passed $1 trillion in market cap earlier this week. And so $20 million, it's not a huge percentage, but it is too. And so all of a sudden, this starts making some sense here. And so it's one of those things where you have to consider that it is a really, really small pond and everybody's jumping in, and the water is going up very quickly here because these large entities are jumping in. So as I said, I just hope I'm not still around when they all leave.
We mentioned stimulus earlier and the potential to be getting more, and there seems to be a correlation from what I've seen of people just taking their stimulus checks and putting it right into Bitcoin. What do you think of that, Charles?
Stranger things have happened.
Right.
Stranger things have happened. There's no reason not. So a lot of the people getting these stimulus checks really honestly need them. I mean, they're out of work, or, their hours have been reduced, or, their business is suffering. So, the people that really need it, that money's going to go pay for food or rent, right? But for that next person up the chain who still has a job, hasn't, their life may be inconvenienced by all of this, coronavirus stuff, but it's not, they still have a job, right? Yeah, that person just got $2,000 richer. Well, why not go spend it on Bitcoin? What are you going to do? You're not going to take a vacation with it. Half the world's still closed. So putting it into Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, that's not implausible.
Rodney, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think you should split it between Bitcoin and Tesla, right? Because they're both, interesting investments.
That's a diversified portfolio right there.
But to Charles's point, right? You're a new trader on Robinhood. You're a longtime trader at Merrill Lynch or Bank of America Merrill Lynch now. It doesn't matter. The point is, here is an asset that exists that is moving higher. And the point of these home run type investments is to buy something that has outsized potential, and you limit your risk with the amount of money you put in. So you take your $600 and you put it there. So what? All right. You put it in there and see what happens. And what you've just done is not talk your own book, but certainly create more scarcity. One of the things I've told people about Bitcoin is when you buy it, you kill it. Think about what you've done. You buy Bitcoin, and so the amount that you've purchased, be it through Square or however else you did it, is now sitting in a digital vault somewhere, no longer available for anyone else to buy. So you have shrunk the pool of available Bitcoin in a pool that was already small. And so that's why I think there could be incredible buying pressure on this for, at least another 6 months or year till it goes to something really weird and warpy between 50 and 100,000. So
interesting. Rodney, you mentioned Tesla. So that brings me to one point I was going to bring up earlier. Elon Musk is now the richest man in the world, passing Jeff Bezos. And Rodney, you've been a very frequent critic of Elon Musk and Tesla. So how badly does this stick into your craw?
Not at all. I think it's hilarious. I view a lot of what happens in the economy as entertainment. And I think Tesla is a great example. The car company that makes 0.5% of the cars that were produced last year. They just missed their goal of 500,000 units last year out of roughly 98 million cars produced. And they're not only worth more than the largest car producer on the planet, which is Volkswagen. They're larger than Volkswagen, plus Toyota, plus General Motors, plus Ford, and plus most everybody else. And so it's silly. But silly doesn't make a share price. The share price is decided by the last guy who's willing to buy and the last guy who's willing to sell. And right now they say it's worth a lot of money. And God love them, right? I think it'll correct. I've thought that for a long time. I thought it when Tesla was at $300, and now on a split adjustment, I don't even know what it is, more like $5,000, because eventually people are going to figure out they can never ever make money selling cars, which they don't today. They make money selling emission credits, and there's a lot of competition coming their way over the next 2 years. So,
Rodney, Charles, do you agree with Rodney, or do you think Tesla's right where it should be?
I mean, Volvo made a decision, I want to say 2 years ago, to go all electric. Now they're not there yet, but they're moving there. Like they're going to be, they're going to be an all electric company within years, right? This is an established car maker that's been around for a long time and actually knows how to make money. At the end of the day, Tesla's not that special. They're cool. I mean, I wouldn't mind having one, but they're just not that special. Now, as Rodney said, what's the stock worth? It's worth what people are paying for it. I mean, if you're a shorter term trader, knock yourself out in Tesla, have fun with it. I mean, geez, the thing's up by a factor of 10 over the last year.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to be active, if you're not going to keep an eye on it, you should run away. I mean, the old Warren Buffett rule of, if they were to close the market for 5 years, would you be comfortable owning this? Well, good night. No, not on Tesla. I mean, this thing may still go to zero before all said and done. I mean, I think it's madness, right? But, hey, I mean, it's madness to go to Vegas. The odds aren't in your favor, but people still go and have a lot of fun, and some actually make money, right? So in the case of Tesla, I mean, ride it higher, play the momentum, have fun with it. Just don't fall in love with it and have an exit plan.
Is Tesla the Bitcoin of companies?
I actually think it's crazier. I mean, I like Bitcoin. You can at least make an abstract argument that this is a viable, competitor with fiat currency. I think that gets a little bit ideological, but okay, you can still make the argument. There's just no credible argument for Tesla. I mean, there's not. But have fun, right? And by the way, Robert Downey Jr. said that Elon Musk was his model for his Iron Man character, his Tony Stark Iron Man character in the Avengers. I want to see Elon Musk take his newfound fortune as the richest man in the world, build the Iron Man suit, and actually be Iron Man. And I think he's actually crazy enough to do that. How much would you pay to see that? Just as a spectator? I mean, I'm not comfortable admitting how much I'd be willing to pay for that.
I don't know that I'd pay anything, but it would be entertaining.
I'd like to see it as well. Fellas, we got a jobs report this morning. Excuse me. December payrolls lost 140,000 jobs. Well, this recovery definitely seems like it's stalled. Rodney, what'd you make of this report?
It was expected. I mean, the expectation was 50,000 jobs created. Instead, it was a negative 140. 190,000 swing in an economy of 160 million workers is a blip. It was more about what people thought was going to happen. And all of us knew that there were more economic restrictions last month. There were more capacity restrictions. We all thought this was coming, but we also see the stimulus. We also see relief. We also see everything we've already talked about here. And so investors are looking far down the road, as are individuals, and saying, yeah, that's where we are today. But we have 2 vaccines with a 3rd and a 4th on the way and therapeutics, and we're already in the process of inoculation. And so the light is there at the end of the tunnel. The question is, how long does it take us to get there? That's why I don't think people are going to care very much about this.
Charles, are you shrugging this off as well?
I still worry we may have another round of lockdowns at the national level. I mean, already several states are there. The question is, well, okay, that needs an explanation. If you do have kind of, March style lockdown nationwide, I don't think you're going to see the same impact in the stock market that we did a year ago, because you have the Fed there. I mean, why did the market collapse like that in March? It wasn't because a bunch of analysts with spreadsheets did a discounted cash flow analysis and said, oh, based on the closing of the economy, we think earnings are going to be this much lower. Therefore, the stock market needs to be this much lower. That's obviously not what happened. There was a liquidity crunch. People freaked out. They pulled market. They created a liquidity hole, and everything just fell. That's not going to happen this time because, again, the Fed is just dumping billions upon billions of dollars into the capital markets. And also you do have this, carrot, dangling of, the stimulus checks coming, the vaccines finally having their effect. So while I think it could get really bad, at the economic level, I think the economic data could be really, really terrible for the next 6 months. I don't know that it's going to really derail the stock market. So I think that what ends up derailing the stock market is actually, things getting good enough to the point where the Fed feels they need to start raising rates. That's when I think the party's over. Even if we do have massive lockdowns and whatnot over the next few months, which again I think is pretty likely, I don't know that it really derails the train.
Rodney, any thoughts on that?
I'm right there with him. I think Charles hit it spot on. It's about higher interest rates. That's where things are going to get weird. The Federal Reserve now has a job, and that's to keep interest rates so low that the government can afford to pay the net interest cost on the bonds outstanding that they've used to do all this deficit spending. And so when the pressure on the market is to raise rates because inflation's creeping up, and then the Fed tries to hold them down anyway and manipulates the market through different mechanisms, which are way more than we need to talk about here, that's where things are going to get weird, and the stock market's going to get very skittish.
Well, I think that's as good a place as it is to leave this conversation. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you both for joining me. I'd love it if all of you watching would subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and I want you to head on over to informedamerican.com and wallstreetwirenews.com. Rodney, and if they go ahead and do that, what kind of stories can they expect to see in their inbox on politics and finance?
Well, next week, it's going to be all about what people expect from a Biden presidency that has both a Democrat majority in the House and, of course, the split Senate with Kamala Harris presiding. And so people are going to be talking about the spending and the different social issues that are going to come up. I think this whole thing about the 25th Amendment and impeachment is going to be a loud story because I think that if I'm an opponent of Donald Trump, what I really want is him not to be a viable candidate in 2024. And so if I can make it to where he's legally not allowed to run, my life is pretty good. And so I think you're going to see some loud calls for that, but I don't think anything's going to happen.
And Charles, I want to thank you for coming on today. It was great getting your opinion here. And if people want to find your work, how can they do that?
Yeah, just go to SizemoreCapital.com or CharlesSizemore.com.
Excellent. For Charles Sizemore and Rodney Johnson, I'm Dave Okenquist telling you to get informed, America.
You've been listening to Get Informed, America, brought to you by the Informed American Radio Network. Please like and subscribe today in order to get new exclusive weekly episodes. Any questions, thoughts, or comments can be sent directly to info@informedamerican.com. And don't forget to visit informedamerican.com to keep up with real, smart news. Until next time, fight fake news and find common ground.